Hey everybody, this is Greene here for my first webinar. I'm hoping that you guys can see and hear me fine. As I said, this is the first time I'm doing this, so kind of hoping that everything works out great. So the title of this webinar was Fretboard Mastery, so I'll just give you some insight into how I have been able to learn how to get around the guitar pretty well. And it's a real methodical approach, which is something that I wish I would have had when I was first getting it together. So to start with, I'm going to start with some basic fundamental things, which would be scales and chords. I sent an email out with a link to a Dropbox folder that has a bunch of PDF files and some graphics too. So it'd be a great idea if you download those. Also, for those of you who may have done that earlier on, I just put another one in there today, which would really be helpful, particularly when I get to the chordal stuff. So I'm guessing as you guys, just like me, at one point or another, are struggling just to get fretboard mastery. Meaning, I think of it this way: if I have to move my hand somewhere else to accomplish something on the guitar, I feel like the guitar is controlling me. And I don't want to have that feeling ever. I want to feel that no matter where I am on the instrument, that I can express myself either linearly or chordally. So even though this stuff is really fundamental, what I'm about to talk to you about, I still utilize this when it comes to every other aspect of something that I'm learning, whether it be, as I said, voicings or lines, whatever it may be. So I handed out, or I should say I gave out on the Dropbox, something that says major scales. I'm going to start with that. So there is tons of different feelings about how you should play your major scales as far as fingerings go. And I went to the Berklee College of Music back in 1979. And there was a real strict method for getting your scales together. And some of it I think is great. Actually, all of it I think is great. Although there are some cases where, fingerings might not be the best based on the type of linear language that I like to utilize. And I think that you'll probably agree in most cases, because a lot of the stuff I'm talking about is not just for jazz, it's for funk and blues and rock as well. So let me just start with major scales. So I see the major scales based on two basic shapes, I should say. And actually, I should also say one more thing before I get going, and that's back to that Berklee thing. They had us memorize 12 fingerings for the major scale. And I would have to think it was helpful, although I rarely use any more than 7 of them. It does give you like a real deep understanding of the neck, and this is all through the Modern Method for Guitar book by William Levitt, which I really liked. And it kind of depends on what kind of person you are. I've turned it on to students before, and some of them love it, some of them hate it, because you either have a kind of mind that likes a real organized, methodical way of going through things, or you prefer just kind of a mentoring situation where you're just kind of sucking in whatever you can. So either way, let me continue with what I was saying. So as I said, I see the major scales that have 2 basic shapes, and that's the ones that start on my 2nd finger and the other ones start on the 4th. So I'll start with the ones that start on the 2nd finger, which is a C major. So for me, I think this is the best fingering, where rather than play the F here, where I kind of go out of position, and this is a Berklee thing, they would have us do that. But the reason I don't like that for myself is because if I'm playing something in the key of C major, for instance, a D minor chord, I'm not going to play my D minor stuff like that. I'm going to play it this. So that's why I prefer this particular fingering. So I have this one, and then another one that starts on my 2nd finger from the 6th string. And what I've discovered, I'm sure you have too, is that generally something that feels pretty natural in one space typically sounds or feels really good after you skip to one position. And essentially that's what I've done here. This basically feels exactly the same way. And then the other one that starts on the 2nd finger starts on the 4th string. And as I said, these are kind of hybrids of Berklee fingerings and other fingerings I picked up along the way. But for me, if I'm again using that D minor example, That's what feels comfortable, as opposed to, you know. So here's the ones that start in the second. And this one. So that's 3 out of 5. The other 2 start on your 4th finger. And there's another instance where, you know, I've modified it slightly. Berkeley, we would do the B over there on my 4th finger. That feels a lot better for the same reasons. And the other one that starts on the 4th is on the 5th string. So that gives you complete coverage of the guitar. There's all overlapping positions. We have here, 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 and here. And those are the majors. And those are the ones that, like I said, work best for me. And I'm stressing this because it doesn't make sense to practice your major scales in a certain way, and then when you're playing linear material, when you're improvising, to have to change them to adapt to what you're doing. That just doesn't make sense. That's why I really encourage you to make sure you're playing fingerings that you're gonna utilize. All right, so those are the majors. Now the minors, I basically retain the same shape, and all I'm talking about today is 7-note scales. So I'm going to talk about the major, melodic minor, and harmonic minor, which are, you know, 3, you know, widely used scales in jazz, or basically any type of music. So the minors, all I do to the ones that start on my 2nd finger is I start them on my 1st. That's the only difference, aside from the note changes, but the positions are identical. So if I were doing a melodic minor, which is an easy one to modify, because a melodic minor scale is just a major scale with a flat 1/3. So again, all I did was change the E to an E flat by using my 1st finger. And the same thing here. And then the other one will be here. So if you're like me, I like functioning in this way where everything, you know, fits into a tidy little compartment, and rather than have things kind of spread out all over the place. This is easy to see this correlation between the major and the minor. So again, major, minor, major, minor, major. I should have went to the one that started on my 2nd finger. Let me do that again. So major, minor, major, minor. And then the ones that start on the 4th finger retain that. All I'm doing is modifying the scale, which again is taking the major 3rd and flatting it. And then this one here. All right, so those are the melodic minors. And I'm going to get into the usage of them in a minute. I'm not going to talk about it very in depth because, again, this is just about getting the fretboard mastery part of it together. This is not about improvising, but I will talk about it briefly. So those are the melodic minors, and then the other commonly used scale will be harmonic. And so from the melodic, it's just taking the I'm spacing out now. They're taking the 6th degree and flatting that. So you'd have, and then other one from the 1st finger. And the other one. Oh, sorry. And this one, you know, because of that augmented 2nd, you know, it's an unusual interval. What I'm doing right now is just, you know, making sure that those fingerings feel nice, because this scale, the harmonic minor scale, was so widely used by the bebop musicians, you know, guys like Charlie Parker or Sonny Stitt, Clifford Brown, on dominant chords. So if I'm playing G7, flat 9 here, that's the sound of harmonic minor. And a lot of times you'll hear them play, excuse me, an arpeggio up, and the scale, you know, note. So you might hear a lick like. So as long as those fingerings are feeling natural within those types of lines, I know that I've done them right. So that's basically the way I look at the harmonic, melodic, and major scales. They're all built out of the same shape, but that's just half of it, because just looking at those scales as they on their own really doesn't do anything for your jazz playing. This is something that I think I did really badly when I was younger, which was really just kind of practice this stuff in seclusion. I would sit in my room, turn a metronome on, and just practice these scales without really thinking about their usage and the potential usage, in jazz tunes. And this is where I'm going to steer you guys right, so you don't fall in the same trap I did, which was having to make up a lot of ground. I should also mention too, as I kind of briefly looked over here at my computer's off to the side of me, which is that feel free to type in some questions. When I'm done talking, I'll take a look and I'll pick a few questions to answer, but feel free to do it now, so I don't have to, or ask you guys later, because I think there is about a 40-second lag. It's significant. So you might as well do it now, and I'll check them out after I finish talking about the stuff. Okay, so scales. As I said, where I messed up was not adapting them to tunes right away. So the next part about this is just the chords, and I don't think of them necessarily as two different things. I'm always thinking about them the same way. In other words, if I am working on a chord voicing, I'm immediately thinking about the scale that it came from, so I can always have that information available to me at any given time. So on another handout there, I gave you some voicings for Days of Wine and Roses, and I put a second one in there too. So both of those, actually pretty much all the handouts that I've given you, I'm going to talk about right now. This is the part that I think is most important. And then the way I think about it is like this. Actually, you know what? Let me go back one step, because I want to show you how to practice the stuff I just showed you. With these scales, obviously playing them just up and down is fine. I recommend all kinds of patterns like this. Intervals. Whatever you feel is necessary to improve your technique. But more importantly is, don't just stay in the key of C. I did this thing, and it's really goofy. It's almost as goofy as the secret jazz chord thing that I've done on my lessons, but I called it the key of the day. So I would start off a week in the key of C, and I'd do all those scales like I just demonstrated for you, but with a metronome and making sure I didn't make any mistakes. But then I would go the next day to the key of F, and then the next day to B flat. So every single day I would go through the cycle of fourths. So I made sure that I was covering all more difficult keys. And I recommend doing that on any kind of technical practice you're doing, whether it's chord voicings or scales or whatever. Go through this key of the day thing, because we tend to avoid keys like B major and E, but it's real beneficial if you cover those just as frequently. All right, so chords. This is the same thing, where I'm sure all of you guys have done the same thing I did, which was just to, in the key of C, harmonize our major scale, using voicings, drop twos, drop threes, closed voice chords, etc. And that's great. And I did it, and I don't regret doing it at all. But again, I felt the same problem with that as I did with scales, which I wasn't using them in tunes quickly enough. I really believe it should be immediately. So what I came up with for myself, I think this works for anybody, is to harmonize a particular melody note with a chord symbol from a lead sheet. So that's why I've given you the Days of Wine and Roses. And the first melody is A natural. I mean, we have this pickup note, but the way I did it was, wherever a new chord form appeared, whenever there was a new chord symbol, I would take that melody note and harmonize it with that note on top. And that began, for me, developing my vocabulary for chord voicings. You also realize that there are only going to be a few choices at best. Most of the time, it's one or two possibilities. And when you narrow things down like that, you realize that on one hand, the guitar is very limiting, but on the other, that what seems like a monumental task, which is to memorize so much stuff, is really not as difficult as you may think. So the 4 types of chord voicings that are used when we're dealing with root 3, 5, and 7 voicings. And let me be clear about that. This doesn't include voicings in fourths, any of that stuff. It doesn't include any kind of hybrid voicings, like even the so what chord, which is fourths and a third. What I'm talking about is strictly root 3, 5, 7 chords and their inversions. So again, I think this is fine, but this is better. So the first note in Days of Wine and Roses is A natural. The chord is F major. So what you want to do is you want to begin by creating a closed voice chord. That's the nugget, or I should say the seed that every other voicing comes from. So the definition of a closed voice chord is a chord that remains in 1 octave. So the way to go about it is like this. The melody note is the A, which is the third of F major. So if I start with the third, beneath that is the root, beneath that is the 7th, beneath that is the 5th. So you just have to go down in order of chord tones. And that's what I'm going to do for you right now. Now, I did this with manuscript paper, and I recommend you do as well, especially when you start, and we're just getting started. There will come a time when you're going to recognize, okay, there's a major chord with the major third in the melody. This is the voicing. But until then, write these out, because some of them also are very difficult to play, if not impossible to play. So, but that might sound crazy, but just check it out. So the first note is A. I want to create a closed voice chord. So I start with my third, then my root, 7th, which is here, and then the 5th, which is here. There's no way I'm going to play that. Even if, I did what John Stoll does, which is holds the guitar up this, I still couldn't accommodate enough neck to grab that chord. The fact that this sounds really good on its own, even though I didn't intend to talk about this, but anytime you find a chord voicing, whether it's 2 notes, 3 notes, whatever, and it sounds good, explore harmonizing it through a scale. For instance, when I'm hearing this, I hear D minor 9. That's a whole other topic. But again, to create this F major, I would need A, beneath that F, beneath that E, beneath that C. Could never play that. So that's where the drop voicings come in, because they open up the inversions to make them more accommodating for guitar. So you'll always recognize closed voice chords because they'll have this very, very intense angle about them, and they're on 4 adjacent strings. Johnny Smith, I know that you all know Johnny Smith, he utilized those closed voice chords a lot, but a lot of them were in root position where they feel the best, where they're easiest to play, like this sound. Those are all closed voice chords. Again, there's that angle, and there's the 4 adjacent strings. Okay, but back to our F major. I want to create a drop 2 voicing, which is the first inversion that I want to work with. And all drop 2 means you take the second note from the top, drop it down an octave. So again, this is where the manuscript paper would be helpful, and I put in the Dropbox folder all the examples I'm talking about right now. So if you had A, F, E, C, you would take the F and drop it. So then you would have A, E, C, and F. So I'll show you this on the guitar also, although I don't recommend doing this. I really recommend the manuscript paper. So A, F, E, C. I need to drop my F. That would leave me with A, E, C. But I just can't take the F here, remove it, and drop it down an octave. All of the notes have to be on adjacent strings. So if I had A, E, and C, I have to revoice it like that, and the F gets dropped, and there's the chord that we've all played so many times. And it is, I'll tell you right now, the best one. The rest of them don't work at all. You might find that surprising, but this is it. When you're a guitarist and you're dealing with root 3, 5, and 7 on a major chord with the A in the melody, this is it. But the other thing you have to think about is how the guitar is divided. And this is also in those handouts that I gave you. So I think of them as sets of strings, like the top 4 sets, top 4 strings, the middle 4, lowest 4. But these are all the same voicings. But once you figure the voicing out, definitely take the steps to learn in any other sense. As I'm doing this, I already see the overlapping scales I just talked about with you guys. So all that stuff is, as I said before, I just think of it as one thing. And this is, like I said, the most important part. As you begin to get muscle memory, as you can tell that I have here, you know, I'm not improvising that stuff. I played those licks thousands of times, not tens of thousands of times. But when I hold my hand in this position, you know, I have all that material that is just basically connected to it. Okay. The next voicing type is a drop 3. And you do the same process, but you must start with the closed voice. So our closed voice was A, F, E, and C. So in this case, I'll drop the E. A, F, C, and the E is dropped. These are the right notes. It's a horrible sounding voicing. That's not helping things, you know, having that flat 9 there. It's got the 7th in the bass, and the 7th isn't an octave that's low enough to start sounding like a bass note. It's actually really, it's about an E flat or a D, where tones start taking bass-like qualities. So this is just bad. Now, with that being said, maybe I can use it as a passing chord. Like for instance, it's okay, but that really basically ruins it. So out of all the chord types I've tried so far, the only one that's working is this. The close is impossible to play. Drop 2 sound perfect. The drop 3, the inversion is awful in this particular case. And the rarest one to work of all is the drop 2 and 4, where you would drop the 2nd and 4th note. So that would be A, drop the F, E, I drop the C. Oops, actually, by mistake, that's beautiful. I have the open G string in there. And by the way, you know, that little thing that just happened to me, you know, don't shut the creative part of your mind off when you're doing this technical kind of stuff, because now I'm thinking, wait a minute, that's actually a real nice chord. Like that. And so I'm thinking when I'm done with this webinar, maybe I'll go, you know, write a tune around this or whatever it may be. But the 4 notes would be this. So it's all 4ths. It's just, you know, it's not horrible, but the best one is the ones when you have the root in the bass. And Joe Pass uses it all the time. This is the go-to drop 2 chord, drop 2 and 4 from Joe Pass. And usually he'll play it and then play through and double the 3rd. So those are all the inversions of an F major chord with A in the melody, and honestly, the only one that I would use would be this. This would be a special circumstance for sure. I can't remember how I played it yet. All right. So then we're to an E flat 7 chord with an A in the melody. So let me take a few minutes and talk about this. There are a couple of ways of determining the appropriate chord scale to use on dominant chords. The reality is that, you know, on major chords, you're limited to 1 or 2 7-note scales, like for instance, the major and maybe Lydian. On minor chords, most times it's going to be just a Dorian mode. Occasionally you'll have a tune that's in Phrygian or in some other minor mode, but for the most part, we'll treat our minor chords with the Dorian mode. Dominant chords have the most potential possibilities because 11 out of the 12 chromatic tones that we have in Western music work on dominant chords. So it creates a tremendous amount of possibilities for us. So the choices are varied, are wide and varied, and it makes it difficult sometimes to come up with the right choice. So here's a couple of ways that will work 99% of the time. All right, so the first one is just seeing how a dominant chord resolves. If a dominant chord is resolving as a 5, you can basically treat it any way you want, you know, with little or no altered extensions or a fully blown altered dominant sound. But when a chord is resolving like it is here, by half step, it's usually a good indicator that it's the tritone substitution. You know, so the tritone substitution is just a dominant chord, a flatted fifth away. So if I want to kind of, think of this, backwards, I could think of the tritone of E flat. That would give me A. So A7. So I probably could play. It doesn't sound great, but it is right. So when you're dealing with chords that are tritone substitutions, natural extensions sound the best. And to further emphasize this, and this is something that is really easy to work with and a lot of fun, by the way, is that just think of the key that you're in at any given moment, which is the key of F. Well, any given moment, what the song is. The song's in the key of F. The diatonic tones are your extensions, and this will pretty much always work. So in other words, 13, the 5th, sharp 11, the 3rd, 9th. So the key is giving it away for you, not the key that the chord belongs to, the key of the tune that you're in combination with just the knowledge that dominant chords usually function in two ways. They either resolve or they don't. Okay? So what I'm going to play here as far as a chord scale would either be the Mixolydian mode, so I have all those nice diatonic extensions. I put in a chromatic pitch in there, but the overall sound is the sound of Mixolydian. Really, what I put in there chromatically was just the bebop scale. Sorry. And the bebop scale is just a way of taking a 7-note scale, turning it into an 8-note scale. So when we're playing eighth notes, we start the new measure on a strong note. Okay, so the Mixolydian is going to work great, but for a little bit of color, add the sharp 11 tone, and that will give you Lydian flat 7. And I almost feel like I'm doing too much music theory, so I'm going to stop right there. But that would be melodic minor from B flat. Now, I talk about tons of all this stuff, as a matter of fact, pretty much routinely on every video lesson that I do. And if you're getting a kick out of this, I definitely encourage you to go check out my video lessons at barrygreene.com. But as I said, for this, I'm not going to spend too much time on that. But B flat melodic minor is right here. And that's one of the fingerings that I showed you earlier, and it fits perfectly with this chord. This is just further ingraining this connection between chords and scale forms. And obviously, when I'm playing lines like this, they're not scales. The stuff you're hearing me play is from years of transcribing. I was a huge, and still am, Charlie Parker and Coltrane. I transcribed tons of those solos, and as you guys well know, I'm a huge fan of Pat Martino and George Benson and Joe Pass. All these are just kind of jumbled into what I guess is me at this point. But the shapes that I'm seeing, though, are those, the ones I just showed you. There's the Mixolydian one. Here's melodic minor. And again, that is just totally ingrained with muscle memory here in my hand. Let's do all the chord voicings now. For this, please look at the extension chart that I have as one of the handouts. This comes from my book through Mel Bay on writing chord melodies, which is great, by the way. But anyway, the extension chart helps you make decisions when you have extensions in the chord. All the chord voicings I'm showing you now are all made up of 4 tones, root 3, 5, 7. What do you do when you have a 6th or a 9th or a 13th or a sharp 11? And that's that extension chart tells you, because rather than add those tones to the chord, you're going to replace them. Use those notes to replace other pitches. So if you look at that chart, sharp 11 is going to replace 5 pretty much all of the time. So I have an E flat 7 chord with the sharp 11 in the melody. That's going to replace the 5th. So if I think about my closed voice, I do it like this. 5th, because the sharp 11 is counting as the 5th. Below the 5th is the 3rd. Below the 3rd is the root. Below the root is the 7th. And that's how I'm going to try to form this closed voice chord. So sharp 11, which again I'm thinking of as the 5th. So after the 5th comes the 3rd, after the 3rd comes the root, and the 7th is down here. Now, incidentally, on piano, these voicings are the easiest because the pianist's hands are the closest. Unfortunately, we only can get to play these rarely. So that one is definitely out. So yeah, again, it's this. Okay, drop 2. As I said, I take my closed voice, drop the 2nd tone down an octave. So the G is going to go down an octave, and the E flat and D flat will stay in the same range. So E flat, D flat, G, dropped an octave. Here's E flat 7, sharp 11. Now, once you've established a voicing, and this goes for every chord, but even more on dominant chords, find other options for moving extensions around. For instance, if you think about it like this, your extensions are built off the root or the 5th of your chord. The 3rds and 7ths, they always stay, right? So off your root, you've got all your 9s, flat 9, natural 9, sharp 9. Off the 5th, you have your 13, flat 13, and sharp 11. Those are all your extensions. So if I'm playing this chord here, sorry, here's my root. So I'll play with trying to see how the chord sounds with other extensions. For instance, here's E flat 7, sharp 11 with flat 9. That's the West chord. From that's it. So flat 9, natural 9. That's really the sound of this tune. I'm going way too far, but that's the sound. Because as I said to you, the extension choices I'll be using are probably going to be, or very, very likely going to be natural extensions. So even though this chord sounds great, flat 9, in this particular case, it won't, because of the instance we're finding ourselves. Listen. Doesn't sound good. But in 4 on 6, it sounds great. It just depends on your circumstances. With the natural 9, it sounds great. It's killing. Here's with sharp 9. It sounds great too. So once you get these forms, explore the possibility of building other extensions off the root or the 5th. Then you'll come up with, like I said, you'll unfold or uncover all these voicings in a much more organic way within a tune. You're never going to forget these. Whereas if you just went and just played all your drop 2s as an exercise, you just don't remember them the same way you do when you're dealing with this in a musical situation, like working in a tune. Okay, so that's the drop 2. Let's do the drop 3. So same process. Closed voice chord was A, G, E flat, D flat. So I'm going to drop the E flat, which is the 3rd note. So A, G, and D flat stay. I drop the E flat. And I get this. This looks really uncomfortable, but it's just that in disguise. Remember, as I said earlier, play these in all their string sets. The drop 3 I forgot to talk about, but the drop 3 you'll always can tell it'll have 3 adjacent strings and a skipped string. But that's the same as this, a chord that we all play a million times. But in this middle set, it doesn't feel that great. So far in this case, we have 2 options. Oh, let me use the chord we talked about. That sounds great. We're here. That's a hard one to grab. And as you can probably tell, I never use this version, this set. It's just too much. But this I use all the time. So the other thing I hope you're noticing is when you do this, you're also setting yourself up to create a real basic but nice chord melody. And if, depending on your time, you know, when I was a student and in school, I didn't have the kind of time that I had, you know, when I graduated and was just playing gigs. So during the school year, maybe I would try to do a measure or 2 of this exercise I'm telling you. And I guarantee it, money back guarantee, that If you did this every single day, your vocabulary of voicing is going to go through the roof. You're going to remember all the chords. You're going to have all of a sudden a dozen chord melodies. Your comping is going to improve by leaps and bounds. I mean, all of it. It just does so much. And when you combine it with the scale stuff I just told you about, you'll never be on the guitar in an area where you're unable to play something. And that's the point of all of this, is just having command of your instrument. Okay, so back to what I was saying here. We have our drop 2, our drop 3. I'm not going to do the drop 2 and 4 as I'm, practicing what I preach here. I already know that the ones that really sound the best are the ones that have the root and the bass. And this is not going to be the case in this particular one. So here I have this. I'm trying to remember what I put for. Oh, I didn't even go through the whole D7, so I'll stop there. But you go through the whole process. As I said, anytime a new chord arrives, just look at the melody note, determine what it is, harmonize it using closed voice, drop 2, drop 3, drop 2 and 4. You'll uncover tons and tons of stuff. And after that, it's just a matter of putting the scale forms I talked about earlier with them. Now, like I said, we're only dealing with 7-note scales. I'm not talking about diminished, which you can spend a lifetime on. That has so much material in it, or whole tone, or pentatonic scales. But with these 7-note scales, you can make tons of music. And let's face it, Charlie Parker and Clifford Brown, those guys did a heck of a job, basically just using major scales, harmonic minor, and the diminished arpeggio. Which pretty much makes up the entire jazz language from that particular period, the bebop period. So anyway, the other part of this is being able to play, as I said, anything wherever you may be. So to test that, or to work on accomplishing that, I'm a huge believer in practicing tunes in one position, be able to do everything in one position, meaning every chord voicing and every scale, because that's where you end up failing, is when you're playing something or playing Wine and Roses, and I only knew this chord sound here, and I only had linear stuff like there. That would force me to have to move, and I'd play something like this and break up the whole continuity of the line because I don't have that information here. So the way to go about doing this is just, first you have to do what I just explained to you. You've got to get an amount of vocabulary, chordal vocabulary under your hands, so you can grab these chords. I also would encourage you to check out, if you haven't already, my another goofy thing, the secret jazz chord lesson that I did, which shows you how to utilize one particular chord inversion to play 6 different chord forms. And that really helped me out as far as the topic I'm talking about now, which is playing in position. So if I were to take just the first series of chords, which would be looking off into space because I was trying to remember what I put on that PDF. So I did that much. So this is the PDF where I have all the voicings written out. So as I said, what I'll do is I'll just start in a comfortable position. Here's F major 7. This is a closed voice chord. It's one of the few that actually work. Here's my scale. E flat 7. I would use either the mixed Lydian mode or Lydian flat 7. Then D7. Now, I promised myself I wouldn't do this, but lead sheets could be very misleading, as most likely they will be. The one I sent you, it's the only one I could find, but it says like D7 flat 9, flat 5, to whatever it says. Extensions don't need to be in chord symbols really at all. I mean, I'm okay with it personally if that is a primary melody note. Then it makes sense just to kind of highlight the fact that, yeah, be careful. this voicing should contain flat 9 because it's in the melody. But you should be able to determine that by yourself based on where the chord is going. As I said before, if a chord is resolving, you can use any alternate extensions you want, no matter what the voicing says. In the case where it's a tritone sub, or it's not functioning like a dominant chord, that's something else entirely, and you generally will treat that with mixolydian or Lydian flat 7. So, as I said, sometimes putting cymbals causes more trouble than others, but the sound I particularly like is this. To play like, like an A minor 7 sound, kind of make it a 2/5 or D sus. So what's going to determine whether or not this works or not is very simply the melody. And melody is everything. Melody is your primary source of chord voicings, and whether or not things are going to work right. The melody note is just D and C. Honestly, I mean, I wouldn't do it, but you could just play a regular old D7 chord because there's no extensions here in the melody. So, but that D is going to sound great on an A minor chord. All right, so, but the chord I chose because I want to stay in position, I think was this. So here's F major, closed, E flat 7, drop 2. This would originally have come from this. If you went through the process, you'd have come up with this for the drop 2. But as I said, here's my root. I'm going to explore seeing what happens when I add extensions. Flat 9, natural 9, sharp 9. Just kind of cataloging all these in my mind. I like that one a lot. The closed voicing I would have gotten was this. I mean, it's fun, it's easy, it's real practical, it's methodical, it's just a great way of learning voicings. But the D7 chord I selected was this. This is a closed voice chord that happens just to work great. So now I have and then for the G minor, I could play G minor 9. The drop 2, this is the closed voice. The drop 2 would be that. And then I think I gave you the Joe Pass chord. And then we get to B flat minor. Drop 2 works great here. B flat minor 7, E flat 7. So let me just go back with that. A minor, D minor, G minor 7, E minor 7 flat 5. There's a closed voice chord as well. It's utilizing the natural 9, so it's coming from a more advanced scale. And as I said, these are the kind of things that I cover in video lessons, and I really do encourage you to go check that stuff out. But anyway, let me stop here because I made a big deal about saying that, that the closed voice chords aren't as usable. And it's true. In their pure form, which is root 3, 5, 7, stretches are insane. But once you start adding tensions to these, or extensions, I mean, they get easier. If you have an extension in the melody, you have a really good chance that you'll be able to voice it with a closed voice chord. So I didn't mean to say that you should discard them. Because during this particular exercise, I've already utilized a few of them. So let me just do that one more time. Closed voice, drop 2, closed voice. So I'm 2 out of 3, Closed voice again, drop 2, drop 2, drop 2, drop 3, drop 2, drop 2, closed. This is C13. E minor 7 flat 5, closed, drop 2, drop 2, closed, closed, drop 2, closed. So the closed ones are probably most of them, but all of the closed ones I played, except for the one that was in root position, had a bunch of extensions in them. But the point of this is I played all of those in one position, and they're all good voicings. I'm not utilizing voicings, copping out, just playing something lame to make it work. I'd use these all the time. So in a musical situation, I might comp that like. So those, all of them. And with that, go all the scales. I know this seems like a lot, but you're not going to do all of this in one particular sitting. You're going to do 1 or 2 chords per day. F major scale. E flat 7, melodic minor from B flat. D7, if I'm playing with natural extensions, it would be D mixolydian. I'm playing with the altered sound, E flat melodic minor. G minor, G Dorian. B flat minor 7, B flat Dorian. E flat 7 here, this is the tritone substitution, or look, I can just say this. Actually, it's not the tritone substitution, it's the backdoor 2/5, which I'm not going to discuss right now. But I do know it doesn't resolve, so we'll most likely take natural extensions. A minor, which I just think of as the 1 chord. In other words, the 3 chord in a key, just think of as the 1. So when I play A minor in the key of F, I just play the same stuff I play on F major. D minor, same thing, F. G minor 7, Dorian. C7, Lydian flat 7, non-resolving dominant chord. E minor 7 flat 5, G melodic minor. A7, B flat melodic minor. D minor, F. G13, Lydian flat 7. G minor 7, Dorian, and then the C7 chord, the 5 chord of the key. As I said, when you have a resolving dominant chord, I can use any extension I want. So I could play just a pretty, C13 chord, or I could play the altered sound. But all this is in position. So what I'll do now is I'll just play at a moderate tempo through all of that in one position, utilizing all the scales I just told you about, and just basically connecting everything. I know it's easy for me to say, hey, just connecting everything, but this is what I did to accomplish that. The one thing I can't deliver to you right now is all these lines. Like I said, they're things that I've transcribed over the years. I started transcribing, I was in high school. I'm 54 years old now, although I don't transcribe any longer. But when I was doing it, I did a lot of it. So that's where I acquired most of this stuff. But as I've been saying, I know I sound like I'm pushing those lessons, and I guess I kind of am. But those lessons contain so much written material on the PDFs as far as the stuff I'm playing for you now, the kind of lines I'm playing. You'll never run out of stuff to practice. But anyway, so here's an example of playing through Wine and Roses with all those chord scale relationships in position. 1, 2, 3. So that was covered, which is halfway through the song. As you know, all these standard tunes follow a pretty typical format, and the second time through the song is almost identical. So once you've done the first half, you're pretty much all the way there. And really, that's it. That's how I look at, conquering the fretboard. What I just did for you now, I would do starting on all the other F major chords that I would come up with. Here's drop 2, closed, drop 2, drop 2, drop 3. And I would start the exercise from all those spots and do the exact same process. I will always have a good chord voicing nearby based on what I just showed you now. It's a system that actually works. I feel like there should be something blinking here right now. There are operators standing by, but it definitely works, and it's been super beneficial for me. So at this point, this part is totally new to me, so forgive me if I look like a spaz, but I'm going to grab my glasses and just kind of scroll through some of these questions to see if I can answer some of them. All right, so I'll just look at this very first one, which is about the harmonic minor. Okay, just asking about the arpeggio that's built into the harmonic minor. Let's do it in the key that I'm in right now so we maintain that tonality. So if I were playing the 2-5-1 in F major, so here's the sound of harmonic minor for a C7 chord. I'd play F harmonic minor. So this is the sound of F minor. But the arpeggios are really easy to think about if you think about them from the third of the chord. So if I'm playing a C7 chord in Days of Wine and Roses, the third is E. Smack right in the middle of the scale, I've got my chord, which is C7 flat 9. The harmonic minor scale contains flat 9 and flat 13, if you didn't know that. Those are the available extensions in that chord scale. And the lines, like I said, it's interesting how this happened, but it seems like guys like Charlie Parker would arpeggiate up and scale coming down. Donna Lee's a perfect example, where he goes. But anyway, back to the key of F. 2-5, G minor. Just think of the third as a starting point. No matter where you are on the guitar, if you are playing a good voicing, and these are easy because you could just use a diminished chord. Here's another one. Just play your diminished arpeggios, your scale. It's going to be right underneath it. It always works that way. Okay, take a look at another one here. Okay, you know what? There are many questions, so that's pretty much it. Let me see. Okay, this is a great question, and this does come up. This is about, and you'll discover this on your own, where you have the third on the melody of a dominant chord. The example this person used was F7, so I'll do that. So here, if you go through the whole process with an F7 chord with the A in the melody, the closed voice would be A, F, E flat C. A, F, E flat C. I can play this, but I don't want to. The drop 2, I would drop the second note, so I'll drop the F. That would leave me A, E flat C, and drop the F. So I get this, and this is the chord that he's talking about. That, it's just kind of lame. What you can do is make it flat 9 to make it sound that much better. But if you're in a situation where the dominant chord is not functioning like a 5 chord, like I said earlier, like it's not resolving, and you can't use flat 9, you're in a bit of a pickle, so to speak. So the voicing that I like when I find myself in this particular position is a closed voice chord that sounds like this. It's really the same. It's exactly the same as this. That actually is the secret jazz chord, by the way. But in this inversion, or in this set of strings, it's this. And this, as you can see, is a bit of a stretch. So usually I'll put the sharp 11 in there too. And I get this really easy E flat G, B natural D. So that's the chord I'll use if I'm playing a dominant chord with natural extensions. This is the chord I'll use if I'm playing a situation where I'm resolving. Yeah, but this, that's a killer. All right, let me see if there's any more. Yeah, I'm not seeing much in the way of questions. Kind of bummed out about that, but you know, I'll sit here for another minute if anybody has anything else. I'm open for just about anything, even if it's not related to what I'm talking about here. You know, when I was getting kind of technical with chord scale relationships and stuff, you know, I wasn't necessarily assuming that you may have all that knowledge. But as I said, that's the one thing that I talk about most frequently, probably in the my video lesson series. So, as I said, definitely check it out. You know, I wouldn't tell you to do that if I didn't really feel strongly about the quality of those lessons. And plus, now I'm giving a 3-day lesson subscription. You know, it costs $5. I mean, I do work hard to put that material together. I don't feel comfortable just giving it out for free, to be honest with you. But anyway, for $5, you can utilize. I mean, have the same access as everybody else for a few days. So definitely check that out. No, I'm not seeing any other. Okay, define natural extensions on dominant chords. So what I mean, natural extensions meaning that they are diatonic to the scale that you're in. So for instance, let's go back to Days of Wine and Roses. The C7 chord, if I were playing the Mixolydian scale, those contain the natural extensions, that particular scale. In other words, 9 and 13. Basically, it's an unaltered extension. Sometimes it's easier to think about the arpeggio when dealing with extensions rather than scales, because where they fall within the scale sometimes can be confusing. But if you just build your chord, which is root, 3, 5, 7, and then beyond that, those are extensions. So 9, this is the sus4, and 13. Those are all the notes that are in your Mixolydian scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. It's 7 notes. So it's just like looking at a scale vertically rather than horizontally. And that's all there is to it. Honestly, I don't even think about it as scales or arpeggios, other than the technical part of having to learn to play them. But it's all, just to me, it's the same thing. It's seeing it like this or seeing it like that, but they're the same notes, you know. But anyway, so the natural ones are the ones that are contained diatonically to the key you're in. That's that. Let me see if there's anything else. Oh, this is good. So a whole bunch are coming in now. Somebody's asking if there's going to be a link to watch this later. Yeah, once I edit it, I'm going to put it on YouTube. Let's see. Yeah, and this is I feel so bad because you can feel the sadness coming out of his question. Is just the fact that it seems overwhelming, and it is. But I was the geekiest, nerdiest guy in school. I mean, I regularly was threatened to be beaten up in the school playground, and it's part of my nature is to have this, a real method to things. I don't like this person is feeling, that feeling of anxiety about so much stuff to learn. How do I do this? Where do I find the time? How do I? It's a lot. So I was going to make actually a little presentation with this. I wasn't able to figure it out how to do it, but what it was going to be was this. You'd have a picture of yourself on the top holding a guitar. Your goal is to be the jazz guitarist. And beneath that, you're going to have 2 huge subcategories. And one of them is the artist, and the other one is, the craftsman. And the craftsman is what we're talking about now. The artist, this is the hardest part. But you can take this part and make it into a system that you can accomplish during the course of the day. So if you take that craftsman part and break that down into 2 broad categories, it's stuff I talked about today: scales, chords. And if you just think of your scales and arpeggios as one, as I said, think about it that it's just this or this, it kind of, at least in my mind, made things a little easier. Do the scale, the key of the day thing that I talked about. I gave you 3 scales today: major, melodic, harmonic. There's tons more. So I'm not trying to make this seem overwhelming, but for instance, I remember being in high school and during the summertime, had so much free time that I was able to do what I just showed you, that key of the day thing, with maybe, you know, major, minors, diminished, and whole tone. You know, I actually would have the time to go through all those scale fingerings. But if you're busy and you're working, you're gigging, you're going to school, whatever it is, just chop it up. And so do it like this. Do your majors in the key of C. The next day, do your harmonic minors in the key of F. Next day, do your melodic minors in the key of B flat. And then you're back into the majors on E flat. And you know, you'll get to all the stuff rather than trying to accomplish so much. When it comes to the chord voicing stuff, do what I told you. Open up a fake book to a tune that you really enjoy playing, because you're going to sit with it for a long time, and feel good about getting one chord done. Because the thing about what I just showed you is that every time now, and you won't forget it after today either, that you see the third in the melody on a major chord, you're going to pick this chord. That's it. That's it. So after a while, you'll stop having to write it down, and you'll be able to, honestly, you will get to the point where you can sight read a tune and harmonize every melody note and basically play a chord melody just from scratch if you do it this way, you know. So just compress things, I guess is what I'm thinking. So you get to everything, but just a smaller amount of time. Those are the main. The only other thing I could add to that craftsman part is technique. And you guys know that I'm a big advocate of trying to play as cleanly as possible. I don't know why that the guitar is really perceived as an instrument you can just pick up and start playing. When violinists and pianists are playing scales and arpeggios from the minute they start playing the instrument. And that's the way I thought about guitar. Is that no, I want to play it at if I can, a virtuosic level. I want to practice. So that's the only other element of that craftsman part. And it's the same thing though. If you're working on major scales, actually you can even combine the two things I just talked about. Once you've got the fingerings, put a metronome on. And just strive for clean technique, like I just played for you there. I'm not playing it fast. And by the way, I get this question a lot. I never did practice fast, ever. I never tried to get the metronome faster and try to keep up. I never did that. Maybe somebody told me, or maybe I just had the insight that if you have good technique, the speed comes. As a matter of fact, I have a colleague over at UNF who's got a great quote. I don't know if he came up with it or not, but he said, speed is a byproduct of good technique. So I say that often. You've probably heard me say it already. But that's the stuff that's in the craft category. You've got your chords, your scales, and technique. Over here, the artist side, this is where you really would want to spend most of your time if you can. And that's, learning tunes, transcribing solos, playing with people. This is so huge because so many people don't do this, and they practice in their bedrooms, and which this is where I went wrong too. So I'm telling you now, try to play with people as much as possible. That's when you're going to find out where your deficiencies are. You'll find out, if you can play things in position, or if you need to, move your hand. You'll find out if you're weak in chord voicings, or can you start a tune? Can you end a tune? Can you play tunes in other keys? Can you adapt when somebody says, hey, let's play all the things you are, but let's do it in 3, or let's play a blues in D flat? Or does that just completely level you and you're out? Those are the kind of things that become apparent when you play with people. And that's where you're going to develop your ability to have a dialogue with another musician. So no matter how much of all the stuff I just talked about today you do, it's not worthless, but to really fulfill it and to bring it to total fruition, you have to play with people. So that was a long answer, but it's a question that I get all the time. Just take the things and, like I said, draw that out what I just explained to you, and figure out, like, in actual minutes, I'm going to devote 5 minutes to this, 5 minutes to that. Or that might be a little bit too little, but you know what I'm saying. And stick to it. Okay, that's that. Somebody's asking, do I think of the home key when playing modes? No, no. Modes, scales, arpeggios, all of it are based on where a chord basically is going, or where it is in a particular tune. Like for instance, in Days of Wine and Roses, we had, I'm trying to think of how many dominant chords. We had E flat 7, D7, C7, and A7, I think. And that's 4 dominant chords. So I can't think of just F major when dealing with those. I think about, you know, for instance, in the example of A7, that resolves to D minor. And I just know, as I said, that in this situation, I can use any altered dominant scale I would like. So based on the ones I showed you today, harmonic minor from D, or the altered scale from B flat, and all those will work. But it's based on where it is. This same chord, depending, it could be in another tune, and I might not use that. So it's all based on where a chord is going in a particular tune. It kind of opens up a door here that I don't want to go into, but I will just give you just like a glimpse into it, which is that these are all what are known as secondary dominants. And once you start, study those and see how they fit in with the typical jazz harmony, you'll get a better understanding of it. I really feel terrible about leaving such an open gap. Again, this is really intended to be a fretboard mastery thing. But yes, I do. But I also said, ask me any questions, so I'm kind of being hypocritical here. Yeah, it's all based on where the chord is in the given tune. So I don't think of it as at any time a home key kind of a situation. Okay. Somebody is asking me about my book. Yes, yeah, this just shows you how crummy I am at trying to promote my video lessons. But yeah, the Playing Jazz Guitar book, the iBook that I wrote some years ago, does contain every ounce of the information I spoke about today and more. And I really have been recommending it lately as a great way to, in other words, if you can understand all the material in that book, this stuff I'm talking about, you'll understand easily. And the stuff that I do in my lessons, you'll understand just as well. It is kind of the, I guess would be the go-to source for all the information I'm telling you about right now. So yeah, definitely. Yeah, so this question is about double timelines. This is actually a pretty easy one to answer. Someone is asking me about how to go about practicing double time stuff. So I might as well still use Days of Wine and Roses. Obviously, I'm going to slow the tempo down. What I do is, first of all, you have to have the material to play. I've seen this happen so many times with students at UNF that they have the chops to do it, but the material is not there. So you really need to basically prepare to, in other words, practice so you can be prepared to execute that amount of material. So a great way to do it is just to slow things down. Or, you know what? Not even necessarily slow it down too much, but slow it down, but extend everything twice as long. Because what you're doing when you're doubling up is you're playing twice as much material in the same measure. So rather than do that, take a tune like Wine and Roses, play it all the chords for twice as much time. And if you can fill all that stuff up with eighth notes, all you need to do is learn to play them faster. So let me just put this into a demonstration. So instead of do this. So if you could play eighth notes and fill all that space up, you're playing double time. It's just a matter of being able to play it faster. So here's that tempo. So it'll be 1, 2, 3. was me playing double time, just really slowly. Let's see. So here is the right amount of chords per measure, but slower. So it is 2, 3. Anyway, I'm messing up on live TV. Can't go and edit this in Final Cut Pro. But that's how I practice it. So just, play things like at a moderate tempo. If you can, get all that information out with extending the form, or extending the form, you're already playing double time. And that's the way I practice it. I wish I would have given you a better demonstration. And also, while I was doing that, I thought to myself, man, I wish I had that Drum Genius app and ready to go, because that is killing. You guys should all get that. I'm pretty sure it would be on both, Android and iOS. But it's called Drum Genius, and it's a great drum machine, way better than playing alone on the metronome. Let's see. Okay. All right, this is just about right hand technique. Yeah. This is the question I get answered a lot, although after that demonstration, I'm not sure why. But anyway, look, this is probably the hardest question to answer, mainly because I don't have the answer. When I look at the guys I admire the most who have a lot of chops, guys like Pat Martino, obviously, George Benson, those guys, both of them have completely different ways of playing the guitar. If you're looking at a classically trained pianist, from pianist to pianist, it's pretty much the same. I'm sure there's some things that I'm not seeing because I'm not a pianist, but there is a way to sit. There's a way to hold your hand. There's a way to practice. There's, so much technique and so much history of proper playing with guitar, especially jazz guitarists for whatever reason. But I guess it's the same with rock and everybody else. I think maybe the only other close relative would be a classical guitar player, who goes in with a real strict way of playing. But for us, it's pretty much good luck. So for me, I happened to grow up in very, very close to a guitar player by the name of Vic Juris, who's just a monster. And he was kind enough, when I was just a kid, probably beginning college or something, to invite me over to his house and we would just play. And I look back at that time with such gratitude now. But anyway, I look at my hand, I think that I have picked up just the way Vic would hold his hand. And I've got another quick story just about a guy who moved down here to Jacksonville and was friendly with Vic. And he had just heard me play for the first time, or maybe either way, he said, man, Barry, your hands look exactly like Vic Juris when you play. Do you guys know each other? That kind of a thing. So there's some of that. But, you have the whole thing basically is this. This is what I believe. I can tell you this, and I can't guarantee it's going to work for you. And the reason I seem so skeptical is that I've tried to help so many other people, and what works for me might not be the thing that works for you. But I'll explain to you how I think about this. It's basically this, that if you were going to build a picking machine, just something that did the job of your right hand, it basically probably would have just two motions. You'd have the up and down thing, right? And then you would have the part that would enable the pick to be on the right string. And of course, they would have to come up a little bit and then go to the right string, but this would be pretty consistent, or would be consistent. And that would be the entire machine. I see so many people where they're playing that there's other things going on. Like it might be the fingers moving like this a little bit while they're playing, or the hand is slightly different coming up or down, or I'm trying to work with my students right now, a couple of them who get very tense when they start to play fast. I'm telling you, whether it looks, I hope it doesn't look that way, but whether it sounds like it, that feels the same as far as the amount of tension in my hand. It feels exactly the same. And so, I've had some people come to me and say, when you play faster, you should play quieter, or you end up playing quieter. And I don't believe in that at all. I practice very hard at maintaining the volume, regardless if I'm playing eighth notes. It's all the same. But to get back to what I was saying, I'm trying to answer this question, is that for me, what works is up and down picking with a real relaxed motion from my elbow. So when I practice scales, when I was really practicing technique a lot, was this. And I concentrated, as far as my right hand is having like almost like an imaginary trampoline, here. So because gravity was working with us on the way down, but on the way up, it's not. So I kind of imagine that, where my hand would be kind of bouncing off this imaginary trampoline thing here, which it works for me. I know it's really impossible for me to put this any better, but that's kind of the way I think about it. And even for myself, if I'm on a gig and I feel myself tightening up for whatever reason, whether it's nerves, whatever it may be, I just have to think about that just keep it relaxed. Now I've looked at my hands, in the mirror, so I pretty much know what's going on over there. And again, I'm just trying to make it as efficient as possible, and that's what I recommend. That's really all I can say about it. I guess the other big point is, I already mentioned it, but I'll say it again, and that's to practice slowly. Don't try to practice fast, because all you end up doing is practicing bad habits and getting really good at bad things. I can't stress, when I was giving you that demonstration a moment ago, that was it. That's how I practiced everything. Even if I was working on a solo that I had transcribed, I would play it with a metronome super slow to make sure that I can execute everything. And then it's just, like I said, the speed just comes. It's a byproduct of good technique. All right, let me see if there's any more. It's the book, Apple. Somebody asked me about my book. It's in both formats. You can get it as in an EPUB format, but you have to, and I make a whole big note about this on my website. You download a free software called Calibre. It's spelled C-A-L-I-B-R-E, and that opens up the EPUB book with all the audio stuff attached. It's the only app that I found that formats it properly. If you have an iBook or a Mac, iMac, or an iPad, just download the one from the Apple Store. I guess that's basically it. Yeah. So listen, I'd appreciate you guys if you would, email me or something. Let me know how you felt about this. Whether I should, try to do these like every few months or so. In my mind, I was thinking about doing another one on another broad subject, which was technique. At the moment, that's all that had come to mind so far, if I were to continue doing these. But I definitely wanted to give it a try, and I enjoy doing it. It's a little bit nerve-wracking because typically, if I say something stupid, I can just go edit it. So I don't know how many things that I'm going to regret saying here live. But in any case, I hope you enjoyed that. So like I said, let me know how you thought about it. I'll put this entire thing up on YouTube. I'll put it up on YouTube so everybody can see it. Thanks for your time and your patience. I hope it sounded and looked good on your end, and I will see you guys soon. Thanks.